Welcome to the Propreneur Podcast, where we help practice owners become better entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Dino Watt. And welcome once again, everybody, to the Propreneur Podcast. So excited to have you listening in today. And wherever you're listening, whether it be from your car, from your treadmill, or just taking a walk, I want to tell you how much we appreciate you being here and listening to the best practices that we're trying to bring to you every single episode. And as you do, don't forget to share these episodes with your friends and your colleagues who also could benefit from learning these best practices that we're bringing to you. And today is definitely no exception at all, because we're going to learn how to cut that overhead cost in your practice, especially as a top Invisalign provider. And we're going to learn this by one of the best in the business, Dr. Bob Skopek. Bob, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Dino. Honored to be on this. You do a great job on this podcast. Love your podcast.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Well, then there's a lot of pressure on you then not to make this a bad podcast.
Yeah, thanks.
That's why I like doing this podcast. Because one of my most favorite things about this podcast is, number one, getting to meet some really amazing people, but number two, being able to really connect with people on a humanistic level, right? I love podcasts. I love what they can do and the opportunity it's given to so many people to get information and messages out there, but more importantly, to connect with people. So it's a little selfish on my part, but hey, I'll take it. Well, thank you for being here again, Bob. And one of the things that I love to do is I love to hear people's stories and to understand, why did they choose the profession that they did? I know I've got a roller coaster of a story of how I ended up here, but I love to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. Will you please introduce yourself and tell everybody about you?
Well, it's interesting story. I'm the first one in my family to go to college.
Oh, wow.
And I grew up in a very blue-collar household. My dad worked in a factory. And from the time I was a little kid, my parents both said, "You're not going to do what we do. You're going to college."
Yep.
But then when I went to college, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. You know, I always grew up and my parents would say, be a doctor or a lawyer, you've reached the pinnacle of everything. Decided, I was always science oriented, decided med school was not for me, did not want to be a doctor, didn't like sick people, didn't like hospitals, didn't like anything about it. So dentistry seemed like a pretty cool thing. So I went to dental school, loved dentistry. And I was that weird kid in dental school where I liked the treatment planning part, where I like to sit down with casts and x-rays and kind of plan out what we're going to do over the next year. Most people in dental school want to get a drill in their hand. Right. Let me start cutting a crown prep. Let me start doing a cavity. And ortho is really that. It's strategizing and it's planning that, putting that puzzle together. And that's what I always loved doing. And, you know, fortunately I had good enough grades to do it and I worked hard enough to do it. And I just love the strategizing. I love the planning of ortho. That's how I ended up in ortho. So
when you sit with your treatment coordinator and you're looking at, okay, what to do with this new case coming in, the excitement for you is the puzzle of putting it together. And then I bet, I'm just going to guess, you know, I'm not an orthodontist, but I'm just going to guess that it's also the work in between to make sure it's on track, doing what it's supposed to be doing, seeing how you can tweak it to make it a little bit better. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, and it's actually, I think we'll get into my 20-year Invisalign evolution, but the reason that I love Invisalign so much now is there's so many tools, so many biomechanical principles I can do in there with the attachments, designing the attachment. It's infinitely customizable at this point. So yes, I kind of virtually now see how's that puzzle coming together. This part's not coming together so well. How do I change this so that this comes together better? And it's a very cool, exciting thing to me.
Well, I could only guess that when the scanner came on and the iTero scanner stuff, that you could actually have the computer at least give you maybe not 100% glimpse, but a pretty good glimpse of what that's going to look like after the fact in 18 months, 24 months, whatever. I bet that was super exciting for you.
It's huge. And we've had an iTero for about 7 years now. We bought one before Invisalign owned iTero. And that, and just seeing the dynamic state of it versus a static plaster model and thinking in my head where that plaster model can be.
Right.
I can actually get on that iTero and on that virtual model and I can play with it and I can putz with it. And I say, wow, that's not going to work. That's unrealistic, or this is realistic. So it's a lot of fun to me to treatment plan and diagnose and do a case virtually like that on the computer. I love it.
I think it's one of those tools that honestly, you know, if you're listening to this show and you don't do this and this offends you, I'm sorry, but I think it's a missed opportunity. I don't understand why every orthodontist and even dentist, if you're doing Invisalign, doesn't make sure every single person that walks in that office for an exam and gets a scan, and whether they choose braces, traditional braces, or Invisalign, aren't showing them the end result. It's funny because if you look at the way that our culture is going, you know, I'll just call myself out on stuff. When I'm alone in a hotel room, my go-to show is HGTV because my wife has taught me HGTV is the thing to look at, right? We don't have normal TV in our home, so we get cable. I'm watching HGTV. And you look at those shows when they show you, oh, what they could do to this room. What do? They show you a computer rendering of the after of what could be, so somebody can really legitimately see themselves in that room. It's the same thing with the iTero scanner that you can actually go, this is what your teeth are going to look like afterwards.
Yes. 100%. And the other thing that I learned kind of serendipitously in scanning in exams, yes, it was about showing what it could do, but I have so many people sitting there looking at their teeth on this big screen and saying, wow, I didn't know they were that bad.
Right.
Wow, I didn't know that was crooked. Wow, they're really messed up. I don't have to say a thing. I mean, they see it on that screen and they're right away, yeah, I got to fix that.
Yep, it's true. It's funny. And here's the thing. I think there's a difference between, and this is, again, just my opinions. I love the 3D imaging scanners, right, that they have those things. But when you see that, you're also seeing a skeleton that you don't recognize. You're like, oh, that's fascinating to see the skeleton, be like, wow, that's cool. That's what my skull looks like. But when you see your teeth and you see, yeah, that's really them. I remember I was at Doug Depue's office, and I remember thinking, Doug, that was so smart. He brought that up, brought the scan up, and showed what the end result would be. And then he went, but let me show you, I would actually do this. And he takes the mouse up and he changes like one or two little pieces, just little tiny movements on the teeth, and just showing them, look, this computer did well. I'm going to show you the art behind this. It was so smart.
Yes. And that's where it gets into the doctor you choose is important because it's really, nobody does Invisalign. We do orthodontics, but we use Invisalign Brand clear aligners.
That's a really good distinction.
And we kind of explain it to people that way. It's like, well, you know, I'm an orthodontist. I'm going to perform orthodontics on you. Yes, Invisalign Brand clear aligners will work awesome for this. But nobody does Invisalign. You're still doing orthodontics.
It's a really good distinction. I don't know why this thought comes to my head, but if you look at other big brands, right? People wear Nike shoes. Nike shoes don't do the running for them, right? They still have to get in there and run to do the work. Right. That's a really good distinction, especially when we're talking about in which we can easily go into the direct-to-consumer market, right?
Yes.
It's like, look, the thing isn't going to do the thing for you. You also need the person to do the orthodontic work and to guide you through it and use the tool of Invisalign or whatever clear liner you're going to use.
100%. And we kind of serendipitously fell into that branding, to be honest with you, because people started asking about the teledentistry. And well, my dentist can do it. And you know, what's the difference? And I simply just say, well, this is orthodontics. You know, I'm an orthodontist. I've gone to specialty school to learn how to do this. And this Invisalign is a tool I can use to do it. And I just shut my mouth and I let them process that. And 9 out of 10 will say, yeah, it's just a tool. I want the guy that knows how to move teeth doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. The artist.
It's been great for us.
Wow. And you've been involved in Invisalign for 20 years. So you were back when a lot of orthodontists even were fighting against it.
It sucked. I mean, plain and simple. It was, I mean, I hope I can say that on a podcast.
Absolutely.
It was, because I was a startup in 2000. So I was a startup 20 years ago.
Okay.
And that's when Invisalign was coming out. My brilliant idea was I start doing all this Invisalign. I'm going to be a rock star in 6 months. And I started doing a bunch of it. The cases came out very mediocre at best. Mm-hmm. It was a very limited tool that would give you very limited results. Over those 20 years, the engineering and the technology that they've done with that has advanced so much that now, in my opinion, it's interchangeable with braces. And you can do anything with aligners you can do with braces. That was not true even 5-6 years ago, in my opinion.
Okay, well, that brings up a question in my head, which I know we can be here today to see the value of it, to see, the guys who are getting out of school can see, like you just said, you can do pretty much the same thing with liners that you can with traditional braces. But what was in your head 20 years ago? What gave you the stubbornness, if you will, to keep going with something like this when you're not seeing the results you want?
Well, I guess, I would maybe call it more entrepreneurial than stubborn.
All right, sure. That's the same difference.
Because it's probably interchangeable. Yeah. But it's really, it's a cool thing when people can fix their teeth more conveniently, more comfortably, and more aesthetically. Now, as a profession, we've gone through, self-ligating braces, clear braces, all these different things, all of which have tried to make it more comfortable, more convenient, more aesthetic. And I always thought these clear aligners are the ultimate in that if they work. And if you can get them to do the same level of care and level of treatment you can with braces. So I always loved the big picture concept of it. And I thought, this is a great idea. I mean, the toothbrushing is so much. I mean, the teens, we do more teens in Invisalign now than adults. And parents love it. The kids love it because they can brush their teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, 13-year-old boys don't brush their teeth. They just don't.
And you don't have to worry about, you're going to get the buildup of the yellow stain around your teeth. And also, it's not a problem there. Right. So I love that you actually came back at me with it's the entrepreneurial side, which is really the most important part of this podcast, I believe, the propreneur side of it, right? Being a professional entrepreneur. Have you always been an entrepreneur? Has it been something that's in your head for a while? Because you could see the big picture, where the reason I bring up the question was about what was your stubbornness was because I think a lot of guys, if it doesn't work the first time, if I have to work harder for it, then they give up on it because they want it to do the work instead of you seeing the big picture the way that you did. Have you always been an entrepreneur?
And I think now that I'm older and I look back on how I've thought, I think I always have. And part of that even was all the school I went through. I mean, I did general dentistry for a few years before I went back to ortho. I kind of saw the big picture, or explored the big picture. I was 32 years old when I finished ortho. So I was a little older, but as a bigger picture vision to me, I'm like, I want to do this. This is where I think I should head. So as I look back on how I've thought through my life, I think I probably have been, because I don't get caught up in the little minutia day to day. It's more the big picture. And part of, again, as we get to the overhead, I mean, I had some struggles through that overhead, big time. I mean, when you become Invisalign centric, all of a sudden, my wife and I start looking at the cash flow and it's taking a beating, but you have to have that big picture in mind of where it's going and where it's going to be.
Well, this is where it's going to be, I think, really educational for a lot of people. I personally have clients who have recently come to me and said, our Invisalign's getting too much. Like, we're doing too much in our office, that my cash flow is poor and so they're pulling back, going, well, I want to stay maybe 40% because then I know I can handle it. So I think your knowledge and information on, so there's a concept called perturbation, and it's what I use when I talk about getting out of your comfort zone. And perturbation is that moment where the coal becomes the diamond, right? It's that scientific break in that life. There's a perturbation moment that has to happen in your business to get to a place where you're comfortable and seeing the benefit of being more than a 40%, 50% Invisalign provider.
Yes, agreed.
So let's talk about that story, because when you had that, I don't know, like you said, you were looking at the cash flow, was it an oh crap moment where it's like, oh no, what are you doing here?
It was. I mean, because we really, again, I did it for 20 years. And once I embraced it and I felt comfortable with it, we ramped up pretty quickly. So in the course of a year, all of a sudden I had several $100,000 in Invisalign lab fee, which is like, yeah, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Sure.
I've been I say fortunate, but I've had attrition to the staff over the last 6-7 years with marriages, babies, the positive attritions and
Right.
the good splits.
Right.
And I didn't replace people because I didn't think I would need to. So I've cut my staff in half over the last 6-7 years. And I just really felt with, now we do the scanning, we have a 3D printer, we outsource the financials, we outsource some of the calls now, and that has all lowered that overhead. I don't have, my staff expense is half or less of what it was. And looking at where, and the revenues have been, I've been up double digits every year the last 5 years.
Wow.
And I'm still, that staff is so low, but I replaced them with technology and with the outsourcing. And now instead of having, 15 technicians running around, which is what I used to have, now I have 6 or 7 concierges and treatment coordinators and hostesses, that are really creating that environment. And that's lowered that overhead. And you have to. There's no way I could afford 15 staff and 2 lab techs and still afford this Invisalign fee. I don't have a lab tech anymore. I used to.
Well, what you did, though, in my opinion, is you created truly the entrepreneur business, right? Where you're understanding one of the main things about being an entrepreneur, a good business owner, is the power of outsourcing, the power of letting other people. People ask me all the time, how how many people have in business? I have 12 employees, and the majority of them don't even live close to me. Like my vice president of sales and marketing is in Georgia. I have 3 employees in the Philippines because we live in a world where you can do that now. And it's the same thing in your environment. If you really think it through, to be able to say, okay, well, I need to look at the evolution of my practice and seeing where it's going. It's the whole Wayne Gretzky thing, right? See where the puck is going.
Exactly.
And get to it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's funny. I just did a talk to a spear group and I put Gretzky's picture up there.
Nice.
And I said, yeah, he's not the greatest because he was the fastest skater or had the best shot. He skated to where the puck was going to be. That's why he was the greatest.
And it's
but yeah, outsourcing, it's like just not having a financial coordinator. It is huge to me. I mean, that's a highly trained position. That's a very important position, and it's a pretty well paid position. Yeah. And, again, people, we have people that have been with us 20 years. We don't have a lot of turnover, but you have turnover.
Sure, absolutely.
You just do. So the outsourcing has been awesome. I mean, it's helped us so much. And we've been able, again, the people that are there love it because they can have fun with the patients, with the parents. They're almost like hosts and hostesses. And it's great. I mean, it's a great experience. People are laughing all day and having fun all day because they're not technicians like they used to. I outsource the technicians now.
It's interesting. I have a client who he's building out a brand new building. And I remember about halfway through the building, it's beautiful, going to be a beautiful building. Love it. And he is one of the top Invisalign providers in his area. And he's adding dental monitoring to it. Uh-huh. And so he came and he went, Dino, I'm going up from, I think it's 5 chairs to 8. And he goes, I think I'm overbuilding. He goes, I don't think I'm going to need all those chairs right now. And he's doing the same type of idea where there's a couple of staff members who it's positive attrition. And yet he's like, yeah, I don't think I need to replace that person.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this story. This is the sad part of the story is that I built a new office 10 years ago. And I own it, and I built it. It's 4,400 square feet and 10 chairs with another plumbable. I need half of that right now.
Yeah.
And that's when, I was looking back then, if I was a braces and wire practice where I'm at now, I would need 10 chairs like a merry-go-round. I don't need it now. And that's one of the things I look at too. I did this 10 years ago. I'm like, boy, if I was building it today, I'd build half.
Yep. So what's your percentage right now of Invisalign versus traditional braces?
We're pushing 80. We're about 80%.
Okay, 80%. Wow. So let's talk a little bit about the cutting the overhead. Has primarily outsourcing been the source of your being able to cut your overhead?
The outsourcing and the technology, things like, again, like the 3D printer. We used to have 2 people in lab, pouring up those alginate impressions, pouring them into plaster models, trimming, polishing, get everything neat and nice. Now with the scanner and the printer, things get printed out. We have the models there. Or we send things to a lab to have something made. You don't even print them out. You scan it, do it virtually. So I've really eliminated a lab tech just with that technology.
You've also eliminated time. Sorry to interrupt you, but it just made me think, because think of the time, and I know this isn't something that everybody always thinks about, but as you were saying that, I mean, I have obviously a lot of practices that use the 3D printing, but the time for that assistant to not only do the impression, to make sure it's right, to come get it. I see this all the time. I have one office where I'm thinking of directly where they go to the doctor, show the doctor the impression. Yes. Is this good? Do you like this? Yeah, no, maybe need to change that. Okay, go back and do it again. Like the 10, 15, 20 minutes of time in your life to make sure a model is done, when you can have the 3D printer do it and not have to worry about the impression, not worry about. Yes. Oh, that's true. I never thought about that. That's really great.
Yeah. And we tried to do ROI the best we could when we bought the printer. And this was back, printers were still pretty expensive. We spent 20 grand on our printer.
Okay.
And we figured the time, we figured the materials, and I figured I had that thing paid for in about 9 to 12 months.
Sure.
I mean, it's that fast. And you save time, you save that overhead, you save all those materials. It's awesome.
So now you've saved it with the technology in that way, the 3D printing. Where else are you seeing that overhead cost that you can cut out?
The time, the days worked, and the amount of people in the schedule. That's the other big thing.
That makes sense.
Again, we've grown and we're bigger, but we're seeing maybe 2/3 of the patients we used to. We don't see as many patients throughout the day. And that's what, Invisalign always tells you. And that's what, the Damons and the self-ligating always tell you. Again, you have to have the mindset that that's how it's going to work. And so many people are used to saying, well, I'm going to do a 2-year case. I'm going to see those people 23 times and that's how it should be. Well, now those cases are, probably 14 to 18 months. You probably see them 6 times. The challenge is making a relationship with them, seeing them fewer times, which is a lot of stuff that we work on. But the schedule is so much lighter now. I mean, there's just so much more time throughout our day for people to get a 3.5 day or a 4-day week instead of a 5-day week, or saying I have to stay till 7 o'clock at night, or I'm going to come in tomorrow even though we're closed because I didn't finish everything. So it's reduced the hours quite a bit because the schedule is so much lighter.
Does it also allow you for the ability, even though your same-day starts might be a different criteria for that, to do more same-day starts because you have that open free schedule?
Same-day starts are huge, and that's a huge part of the overhead because yes, we're somewhere around 55% same-day starts, which isn't phenomenal, but that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, we have that time. And even if an exam would go a little long, they say, okay, they want to get going today, let's do everything. We have time in that schedule to do it.
Yep.
So we don't have to have them back, 3 times. I mean, when I started practicing, we did an hour exam, hour records appointment, and then a consult, and then we put braces on.
Yep.
Now we do that 1 time. So the same day start is huge, but yes, you have to have that flexibility and some of that openness in your schedule, which the aligners have allowed us to do.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it definitely feels like that freedom of the aligners has allowed you. It's kind of like the domino effect. I've talked about this a few times on the show, is that what's the one domino that you're going to be able to tip over that's going to cause so much of a ripple effect to a positivity inside of your office? You answer one question, you're answering many, same type of idea. Mm-hmm. I love it. I'm wondering, do you remember where the mind shift was for you? There's got to be a moment where you were like maybe, oh no, not sure if this is going to work, or maybe going on faith a little bit that it would work. Do you remember when that was for you and how you overcame that?
It was, yeah, I do kind of remember that actually. That was about a year ago, because it was about 2.5 years ago, we really started ramping up. And it was, I mean, with the staff and with the whole business, it was so uncomfortable. There was so much discomfort with that. Because again, I'm struggling to pay the bills. I have this big lab fee coming in. All of a sudden, like early to middle of 2019, it's like, oh, I have cash flow back. And boy, our exams are way up. Our starts are way up. We have people smiling more than we've ever had people smiling. People are happier. So I went through, maybe, it wasn't bad, maybe a year and a half. And there's different lecturers from Invisalign that call it the Valley of Death. You go through this valley of death.
Yep. Yep.
And everybody does.
Yep.
And I think you just have to expect that. But I started seeing the light about a year ago. Now in the last 4 to 6 months, I've really seen the light, and it's just phenomenal how it's working now. I don't think I would have went through that valley of death for 5 or 6 years,
right.
Because then you have to start thinking, is this really the way to go?
Yeah.
But I always believed in it for 20 years. And I always saw the reaction in people's faces when they say, I don't need braces. That's great. I love that reaction. And now that I feel I can give them the same quality result or sometimes better result, like that's great. That's phenomenal.
Isn't that really interesting? Your belief, and not just what you can do, but what the tool that you're using can do, and how you can use that skill that you have translates. And if you can translate that well enough, people will buy into it. And I tell TCs all the time, look, your job is to close people. And the only way you close people is to transfer the enthusiasm you have for the thing that you do to them. And so if you can translate that, you're winning the game.
Yes. And part of that, and part of when I started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, is when the staff bought into that mindset
right.
completely.
Nice.
And because when we started this, I have people with me that have been in ortho for 40 years. They started
right.
when they were 16 years old, and they've been doing this. And everybody was a little skeptical and very uncomfortable with this.
Sure.
Now everybody believes in it, and everybody has that mindset. And when a mom, asks anybody in the office, what do you think? Like, well, I think you should do Invisalign. It's easier to brush. These kids wear it great. We see phenomenal results with it. So that was part of the turning point too, is when everybody believed in it and everybody had that mindset.
That's great. That's so powerful. I love that belief system that you have to really deliver. So let me ask you this, because I always try to put myself in the position of the person in the car driving and the questions they might ask. So we're in a world right now where you mentioned 3D printing. There's a lot of opportunities right now for people to print their own liners, to do their own thing, whether that be with like a ULab or a Spark or whatever's going on out there. And I think that that's not going to slow down, right? There's going to be more momentum coming in that way. So how have you looked into the future to see what you want to do with your practice and what's the most beneficial for you?
Well, the printing in-house and the aligners in-house I use for very, very limited cases. And I think, I don't think, it's interesting because I just had this conversation with a bunch of Invisalign people that came in. And Invisalign to me, I believe is a high-powered tool for orthodontists to do top quality work. I really think and I hope not, because I'm a shareholder, so I hope the shares keep going good. But I'm not sure that a general dentist can appreciate what Invisalign can do. I'm not sure that teledentistry definitely can't appreciate what Invisalign can do. So I think the future, there's going to be a lot of minor orthodontic movement. Things like digital smile design. Christian Coachman, if you've ever seen his stuff. I mean, it's minor orthodontic movement to facilitate conservative restorative treatment, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I think that's where general dentists will take over. I've done a lot of interdisciplinary stuff through my career. I've been through the whole Pankey curriculum, Dawson curriculum for whatever reason, just because I liked it. So I do a lot of these interdisciplinary cases with general dentists, and we're getting to a point where I'm in these study clubs with them, and I'm like, guys, you really don't need me for that one. You need me for this other one. You don't need me for that one. So I think orthodontics in general is going to be much more widespread, much more ubiquitous. It's going to help everybody. It's going to help a dentist that wants to do 3 bondings on the front teeth, but it might be very simple minor tooth movement they can do versus the big tough stuff that we do. But there's so much awareness being raised about orthodontics right now, which I love. I mean, I hear people complaining all the time about the teledentistry, and I love the fact that every dentist in town is doing this. I love the fact that it's all over TV because it raises awareness.
100%.
But then I think the future is there's going to be people like me that are the Invisalign orthodontist.
Yeah.
There's going to be other people that just do Invisalign for minor things. And I think that's the future. And that's where I think orthodontists should stop complaining and actually kind of seize that and say, yeah, that's the future. And there's tons of it out there. I mean, there's plenty to go around.
I think it's such an important point, is that there is so much to go around. I often do this exercise with my clients or potential clients when they talk about competition. I'm like, look, if I were to line up all the kids between 7 and 17 in your area, not including parents, not including, anybody else in a different bracket, and then lined up the chairs that are available from the orthodontist in your city, you could not be in practice and open your practice 24/7 every single day of every single month and still fill all of the needs. There's plenty of need. It's about finding the right people that you want to work with and do the right marketing and know who your avatar is that builds that up.
Agreed. I mean, you have to be the right fit for that person. And I've always also thought you can't be everything to everybody.
Yep.
And that's part of the future too, is where I see a lot of like orthodontists. Well, I'm going to do Invisalign. Well, I'm going to do this in-house thing. And it's like, well, you really can't be everything to everybody.
Pick a lane.
I don't want to be the cheap guy to people online. I still want to be an orthodontist. Yeah. And I just happen to do it with clear aligners. And I use Invisalign clear aligners.
That's a good point. If the teledentistry, the Smile Direct Club, stuff like that, if those companies are truly a threat to your business, then you're not doing something right.
Correct. I agree. 100%.
And by the way, there's a huge news stuff that NBC just did that whole thing, a news report or whatever about Smile Direct Club, stuff like that. It doesn't matter what the industry is. It could be chiropractic, it could be plastic surgery, whatever. When there is exposés about bad things going on by somebody who's trying to provide or they think they're providing what you're providing, that's only a good thing for you if you're really good and you're full of integrity and you can show them there's a better, faster, smarter way.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah,
no question.
Wow, yeah. That's awesome. All right, so any other tips or ideas where people can cut their overhead costs and increase their Invisalign providing?
I think the hardest thing for me, first of all, and I approached it, and everybody says you put your patient first. You got to put your patient first. Yes, of course, we have to treat our patient well, put our patient first. But it starts with me. It starts with what I want to do. And I worked my tail off to learn how to use those aligners. It was not easy for me. I knew how to use braces and wires, and I thought I was as good as I can be doing braces and wires. Mm-hmm. I worked my tail off in continuing ed to learn how to use those aligners. And then I believed in it. It starts with me. I mean, I have to believe in it. Then, like you said, I have to translate it to the staff. And if the whole team there believes in it, and we went through a lot of training and a lot of CE with the team as well. Yeah. And they believe in it, and then the patient gets taken care of wonderfully. And that's where it all rolls. I think sometimes people think, about, the patient or the money, and it's not. It's about you first. Then you translate that to your team, and then it goes to everything else.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. It's you cannot give from an empty cup idea, right? Like if you're halfway invested in the idea of whatever it is you're doing, whether you're doing full braces or Invisalign or chiropractic, whatever, like if you're not fully invested in that and the benefits and the joy of that, and fully invested, right? You mentioned, I think it's true. I never really thought about this. You're giving yourself a second education.
Yes.
You went to school all those years to learn how to twist a wire and how to place a bracket. But now you're having to really educate yourself on top of the education you already have on Invisalign and how to use that. And then when you take that to your team, the team appreciates that. They're going to be your advocates for this, and they're going to be advocate for the patient.
Yes. And we were fortunate that when I kind of approached this hard 2.5 years ago, nobody left, but I was ready for people to leave. You can talk about vision, culture, whatever you want to call it, but the mindset and like, okay, this is what I believe in. I think this is awesome. I think this is the future. It's the right thing to do. It's going to be fun. Let's go. But if it's not the right fit for you, I'm happy to write you a great letter of reference and we'll find you another place.
Right.
And nobody left, but I was prepared for that. And I think that's one of the other, if anything, pieces of advice. You can't worry about too much discomfort or too much turmoil, because you're going to have a little discomfort and turmoil. That's just how it is.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you're not having a little discomfort and turmoil, you're probably not doing something right.
Right.
It's kind of like in business as an entrepreneur. We'll go back to that again. If you're not failing, if you're not having those roller coaster down moments, you're probably not on the ride. Like,
Agreed.
It's part of the journey. So one last question about this that popped up in my head as I was, I remembered this as you were saying this, and I didn't know how to approach this fully, but you're married to a general dentist.
I am.
So how is the Invisalign conversation, like you just mentioned a moment ago, for the touch-ups, for the little things, how does that happen in your office? Does she deal with it at all? Does she deal with Invisalign at all?
A little bit. But she's fortunate that she has me. And I've done things for her that, it cost or cheaper because she's my wife.
Right.
So it's been a relationship that way, or I will help her, to achieve what she wants to achieve.
Right.
So it's kind of like she kind of almost has an orthodontist working in her office.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, actually, isn't that how every dentist should actually feel? Well, if you built that relationship up enough, married to them or not, hopefully the doctors that are listening to this are both dentists and ortho are building up their relationship enough to where they feel like they have their dentist or their orthodontist on staff.
Yes. And it's a little sad the way, because 20 or 25 years ago, that was much more common. And it was very much more collegial back then. It's becoming more fragmented now. Yeah. And that's too bad, because I wonder how the next generation, that are 20 years behind me doing this. Because yes, I still value my general dentists that, send me things that we work together with. I still text and call and talk to dentists, any time of day. But that's waning, which is too bad, because I agree with you. I think it's all about a team. It's like implants. I can't tell you how many times I have patients come in and say, yeah, my implant fell out again. I'm on number 3. And it's the dentist that puts it in. And nothing against dentists doing implants, nothing against that.
Right.
But it's not as much of okay, well, here's the surgeon, here's the orthodontist, here's the restorative dentist, and let's do this as a team. The team thing is going away, which is kind of sad, because I've always been about the team.
That's a really good point, because I was on a call, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours ago with another podcast, and the gentleman was talking about one of the things that they feel is missing out in the practices is to have that advisory board. The people that you have your CPA, your IT guy, all that stuff. And really, I have that in my business where I know that my accountant knows my attorney, who also knows my financial planner, right? They all kind of talk to each other. And what you just said there, unfortunately, is going away in some ways in the industry. And hopefully there'll be a bit of a resurgence of understanding if we build it together, if we rely on one another and support one another, we're going to get a lot further.
Yes. And I think there, as things become more demarcated and the different aspects, the different niches, I think that's going to be a huge niche and a huge part of it. There's also going to be the teledentistry is going to be part of it. Yeah. But I think what we just described as that team, the Pankey, Dawson, Spear, philosophy team, I think absolutely is going to survive and thrive, but it'll just be one niche. Sure. It's not going to be everybody. Sure. Now that's what I like to do, and that's what I want to keep doing. Yeah. And I think it's awesome. But yes, I think in the future it's going to become more, are you one of those guys or are you one of those guys?
Right. Well, let me ask this in the sense of going back to being an entrepreneur. We always like to ask, especially for our practicing doctors, like you're actually, in the trenches every single day. One of the things I really wanted to create in this show is you've got your experts who are doing really great stuff with the products and programs that they're doing, consultants, stuff like that. And then you have your doctors who are in the trenches every day, figuring out what works for them and their business. But just like in any business, doesn't matter what business you are, you're going to come up against some sort of challenges. Maybe it's a technology challenge. Maybe it's a team member challenge. What's the challenge you're facing in your practice right now?
Well, the biggest challenge we're facing right now is, I had 3 opinions and nobody else says Invisalign will work. And I kind of went through the same thing 20 years ago with the phase 1 non-extraction, because I'm a very much of a arch development expansion, non-extraction orthodontist. And I went through that 20 years ago. I said, well, the other 3 guys said they would just pull 4 teeth out. And you know, explain the benefits of the arch development, keeping the teeth, the aesthetics, the function, things like that, the, you know, jaw joint relationship. And I feel like I'm kind of going through the same thing now with Invisalign, because, you know, and we say, and we show them pictures, we show them before and afters. And I got to say, I at least 9 out of 10 people will start with us when we explain, here's what we think, here's how we've approached it, here's the continuing education I've done. Let's show you a few patients before and after we've done with Invisalign. 90% of them stay with us. But I'm hearing that comment more and more now, you know, that, well, nobody else thinks it'll work.
Well, if it's a comment you're hearing a lot, this is my philosophy that I talk to my clients about too, is it's a comment you're hearing a lot, it's something you need to put some focus on. So have you written your mini book or book around the problem?
Not yet, but I'm working on that.
All right. So let me just say, for anybody else who has a problem similar to this, are there 6 questions that you could answer around that problem?
Yes, I think so. I mean, we have worked on our presentation, for lack of a better word, when we get that question. So yes, we are prepared for it, and we know, you know, what to say. And part of it again that we'll say is when they say, well, they said it doesn't work. We'll say, well, this is orthodontics. Dr. Skopek is an orthodontist. He's a specialist. It's just a tool. And he believes this tool will work in his orthodontic hands. So that's a lot of how we respond to it. And sometimes that right away, you can see the look in their face.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I'm not buying Invisalign, I'm buying an orthodontist.
Right.
So we've worked on that.
Here's what I would do if I were you, is I would actually get that on paper and I would actually title it something like the 6 things, the 5 things, the 4 things, whatever it is, that you need to know before getting, or that most people don't know about Invisalign, ... even your dentist, or something like that, where you're actually addressing the actual issue of the 5 things that most people won't tell you about Invisalign or don't know. You know, something like that. And then just do your quick, like, white paper, do a mini book around it. And when someone calls in to make the appointment, either send them a copy of it, have it printed out through KDP or some easy, legit, you know, $2 to have it printed out, or just email it to them and have them, and just say, hey, here's the thing. Here, so, you know, before they even get there, right, they're educated on it. Or an even more powerful thing is to make a quick video of you talking to the screen like it is you're talking to the patient, and and say, you know, some people think that Well, here's what I would like you to know about this. Or some people don't understand, blah, blah, blah. Here's this. You do on a quick 3-minute, 5-minute video, and all of a sudden you are the expert, and those questions are gone before they even walk in the room.
Yeah, no, I love that idea. Because we haven't done that yet, but I've done other videos, and it's amazing the people that watch my YouTube videos and come in because of that. Now, I love that idea, and we haven't done that one.
Yeah,
that'd be a great one.
There's programs out there. There's a program called BombBomb, BOMB, where you can send an actual email that has embedded in it a GIF with you talking, so it looks like a video, and they click on it and it goes to the video. It's actually stored on BombBomb, their server, so you don't have to do it like on YouTube or anything like that. And so they click on it and it will go to that thing, and you can say, hey, thank you so much for watching this. I know a lot of times people have questions about blah, blah, blah. Here's the answer. Here's the other answer. And it could be a 5-minute long video, but you could legitimately, as soon as your concierge or your director of first impressions ask, hey, so can we send you some information before you even come into the office? What's your email address? They give you the email address. She goes over to BombBomb, clicks that video. That's the same video. It goes to everybody, goes out to them, and they get to watch your video. And you can actually watch. It gives you analytics if they opened it, if they watched it, and how long they watched it.
That's very cool. I've never heard of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's a really neat tool. I use it in my business, and I totally suggest people using it all the time.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome.
Good stuff. All right. Well, you have been just a plethora of knowledge, right? Like one of the things on this show that I really try to do is get people on. I want people to be like, oh, I never thought about that. Or, oh, that's really cool. Or, oh, that makes sense, right? That's what I want is the aha moments in this podcast. So you've done that quite a bit, but now we've come to the place in our show where we go through our 6 questions that are just off the top of your head answers. Are you ready to play?
I think so.
All right. Are you worried about it?
No, well, I don't know. No.
Promise it won't hurt.
Okay.
All right. What's the number one thing that you wish that they would have taught you back in school?
Critical thinking. And I'm gonna say that there was our program director in ortho was a very eccentric, quirky guy, and I loved him, and we got along great. And which I don't know what that says about me, but he was a very eccentric, quirky guy. We never even really had classes in ortho. We would have like 2 or 3 hours of seminar discussion in the morning. He'd come in and say, all right, tell me about expansion. Tell me about how the bone responds when you expand. And he would fire questions until you couldn't answer them. And then you have to go to the library, come back the next day, and he would keep you going that way. And I remember somebody asked him once, because we get a report card and we had like 10 classes. We all got A's in all our classes. And we're like, we never had these classes. And he's like, you're at a point where you should be doing this because you want to, not because you have to pass a test. And I want you to think critically. And I still remember that because, school teaches you to pass tests and take boards and get licenses. You got to think critically about things and really what's going on with things.
How amazing would that be if we started doing that like back in grade school and junior high and high school? I mean, that's so true. Would love that. All right. What's a book that every private practice owner should be reading?
The best book I've read in the last couple of years, The 4 Disciplines of Execution.
It's a great book.
I love that book. It ties things down so much. We now have a bonus system that I think is probably working, and I've never had a bonus system that's great because we bonus on lead measures, not lag measures. Nice. We always bonused on production collections. Now we bonus on how many referrals do you ask for? How many Google reviews do you get? How many video testimonials do you get? And you have to have faith that builds the production and collections. But I never really understood the distinction between lead measures and lag measures. So I read that book.
It's so important. It's such a great piece that most business owners and most entrepreneurs especially don't get. And it's the thing that's the most controllable.
Yes.
I can control if I go to the gym and I eat right every day. I can't control the scale.
Yes.
So it's so important. I love it. I'm so grateful. We're going to make sure we put that in the show notes, especially because I love that book a lot too. I've actually probably read it 3 times. I love that. In my book, The Practice RX, I focus a lot on team culture and team performance as the foundation for business growth. So what do you see as a colleague, as someone who's out there in the field lecturing and talking to people, as the biggest challenge that private practice owners are facing when it comes to their team and their office culture?
It's creating that mindset. And I love what you talk about when you talk about that, because it's again, getting your team to have the same mindset you do and follow your vision. And the culture, I guess if the culture's crap, nothing's going to work. You have to treat people with mutual respect, and you have to have that fundamental stuff. But I'm not sure treating people with mutual respect is not going to build anything. You have to have that vision, and you have to get your team on board with you. And that's been my challenge. Now that we are, and we're a cohesive group, it's phenomenal.
Isn't that great?
It's ridiculous how well it works.
Love it. It is ridiculous. I tell people all the time, I'm like, you don't understand the secret sauce here. You don't have to worry about all the other stuff. It's this, and it will make everything better. I love it.
Yeah.
Before we go on to the last 2 questions, how can people reach out to you if they had a question or wanted just to pick your brain?
Easiest way is LinkedIn. Just find me on LinkedIn. Bob Skopek, owner of Skopek Orthodontics.
And it's Skopek for everybody.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Awesome. Okay, so what's the best advice that you've ever received in life or in business?
Well, this is, I knew you were going to ask this, so I thought about this.
Okay, good. Love it. Did your homework.
This was 20 plus years ago, like when I was starting my practice. there was an oral surgery group in town. Wonderful, well-revered, great oral surgery group. I still know some of the younger guys. The senior guy that started it was retiring this 1 year I was at their party when I was starting mine up. And he's, he just passed away a couple years ago, which is, sad. But anyway, and they introduced me to him. I met him maybe twice. Said, it's Bob Skopek. He's starting his own ortho practice. Like, oh, that's great. That's exciting. I said, well, yeah, I got a lot of debt. I have no patience. It's a little, it's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of scary. And he was just one of these nice, kind guys that, he like put his arm around me on my shoulder and he said, you go out there and you just become the best orthodontist you can, and you treat people like gold, and you don't have to worry about money ever. And he's right.
Yep. It's totally true. It's totally true. You be the best in the world at what you do. It's awesome. Love it.
And you treat people right. I still remember when he said that. And it's stuck with me all these years because it's so simple and so basic, but just do a good job and treat people right.
Well, it really goes to show that you understand the power of, it doesn't have to be this huge aha thing, this huge shift. It's the little things that matter the most.
Mm-hmm.
So true. So that being said, what's the best resource or tool that you've used to grow your practice through the years?
I've become a YouTube junkie. And
me too.
I watch, people like Simon Sinek, Seth Godin, Malcolm Gladwell, John Maxwell. I went through this phase for probably 6 months where I was stalking Steve Jobs on YouTube. and I would watch every interview he did and every lecture he did or every talk he did. And I listened to Bezos. I listened to what Bezos says too. Yeah. And I listened to what these really crazy entrepreneurs think and how they talk. And obviously I'm never going to be Jeff Bezos, but I listen to how he thinks. And I think that's helped me a lot because it changes your attitude a little bit. It changes how you think about things.
So that's totally true. I mean, I'm a YouTube junkie for sure. Like my wife probably gets sick of me. What else can I listen to? Everything. And it's such great education. We have that opportunity nowadays in our world to have the knowledge of these people that will live forever for us.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for those answers. And thank you for your wisdom. Your wisdom and your experience that you're able to share with everyone listening to this show. I really appreciate it. It just means a lot. And I know that there are people on this show that had aha moments that are now thinking a little differently about their practice, how they're going to use Invisalign, how they're going to cut that overhead so that they actually can be profitable. It's just so powerful.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thanks for having me. I had a blast. It was fun.
Good. I'm glad. That's one of my big goals here for sure. Well, again, thank you everybody for listening to our show. For those of you that are in your cars or on your treadmills or just taking a walk, just know that we appreciate you being listeners to the Propreneur podcast. And if you feel like you got value out of this, found some best practices that you can use, even if it's one little thing, make sure you share it with your friends or colleagues to let them know that this is a source for them to get more of the best practices that they can use in their office and in their life. As always, our goal here is to help you be more proactive, more productive, and more profitable in all areas of your life and business. Thank you again for listening to the Propreneur podcast. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks so much again for listening to the Propreneur podcast. We really appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do so. Also, if you feel like you might be a good fit for our podcast as a guest or know somebody who you think would be, go ahead and email us at dino@dinowatt.com. Again, thanks for support. We'll see you on the next episode.